Attorney's Office. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Detective Mogg and all the other detectives that were not only assigned this case and reviewed this case, but all the other detectives from other agencies that assisted us in this investigation. They know who they are, and thank you very much for all the assistance you provided. It does not go unnoticed.
Vlad TV.
And lastly, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is we need to make this be a reminder that the charge of murder does not have a statute of limitations. This agency has been and is invested in solving our cold case homicides so that we can bring closure to those families and justice for those victims of homicide. And with that, I will turn it over to the Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wilson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Johansson. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. I am the Las Vegas Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wilson. It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's a quote we hear often and for many, many years when talking about our legal system, but not in this case. Today, justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur. I'd like to acknowledge the relentless work of the many Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department homicide detectives. We've mentioned Detective Cliff Mogg many times, and we can't mention his name enough. He is the detective, along with his colleagues, that brought this case here today to you. A Clark County grand jury has indicted Dwayne Keefe Davis with 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Davis will appear in court in the next few days or so for a hearing to determine his custody status and to set a jury trial date. This grand jury has been receiving evidence for months and has determined there is sufficient evidence to justify the filing of this criminal indictment. I've assigned 2 of my top prosecutors, Mark DiGiacomo and Banu Palal, to prosecute this case. I know a lot of people have been watching and waiting for this day. Tupac Shakur is a music legend, and for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step. Tupac was actually quoted as saying, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while still alive. Never surrender." Well, we didn't surrender thanks to the great work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under the leadership of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, Lieutenant Johansson, retired Detective Cliff Mogg. I am proud to announce the return of this document. This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd just like to say that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Homicide Section year over year solves over 90% of the homicides that occur in our jurisdiction. You won't find that anywhere else in the United States.
90%.
For those family members that have lost somebody that we haven't solved that case, I want you to know, just like in this case, we're not going to give up. I also say to you that as we begin, we're going to take a couple of questions. I want you to remember in your questioning that this investigation, subsequent arrest, and now indictment is only the beginning of the process. And we are committed and invested in ensuring a successful prosecution as we move forward. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have. Ken?
Have you been in touch with the Shakur family, anyone within here today? And if so, can you characterize what they told you?
The family has reached out to my office. I imagine also to Metro. We've been in communication with them. We understand that they are welcoming this news. They are pleased with this news. and they are certainly aware of the return of this indictment.
We anticipate them being at court for arraignment of Mr. Davis.
I don't think they'll be at the arraignment. I mean, that's a relatively short hearing, but I know that they'll be involved. I know that they'll want to be apprised of what goes on a frequent basis.
Back. Can you talk about any of the statements that you made that piqued your curiosity again or got you back into this case?
Jason, what answer that? We're not going to talk about any particular statements, but maybe he can address that globally.
What I'll say is there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out when it comes time for trial, but he provides his own series of statements that are very consistent with the evidence that we have on the scene that we've obtained through our investigation. I'll leave it at that.
Provided his own statements.
That came from the service of the warrant in July that you didn't know before?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I'll say about the search warrant that we did in July, that we obtained information or evidence.
Thanks, William.
Execution of that search warrant that corroborated information obtained through our investigation, and I'll leave it at that until we go to trial. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Keefe D with Channel 3. So I know that this was obviously a big move. Is there anyone else being looked at this point? I know a lot of people have passed away since this incident, but is anyone else being looked at as part of this investigation still?
So as I stated earlier, in this case, the only living suspect related to this investigation is Dwayne Davis.
Only living suspect.
Vanessa.
Thank you. Vanessa Murphy, Channel 8. Steve, can you talk about the murder charge if he is not the one believed to have pulled the trigger?
Yes, well, under Nevada law, and this is the law in most states in this country, you can be charged with a crime whether you're directly involved or whether you're an aider and abetter. We have an aiding and abetting statute, which provides that if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. The best example is two guys that agree to commit a bank robbery. And one of them goes into the bank with a gun and actually commits the robbery, and the other guy is the getaway driver. Never went in the bank, but he assisted the guy that went in the bank. So he's equally guilty. That is one of the theories in this case as well. Last question.
Do investigators believe that Davis was the only person behind the plan to kill Tupac, or was he one of multiple people who came up with this plan?
I think the best way to characterize that is Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed this crime, and he orchestrated the plan that was carried out to commit this crime.
Can you say how he obtained the gun?
Shot caller.
We know that he obtained it from a close associate. That was a lot of the actual details of who specifically, all that come out of trial, but he obtained it from a close associate of his.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
So after 27 years, there was only one person still alive tied to the death of hip-hop icon Tupac Shakur, and it was the man you're seeing right there, kind of being blocked by someone else's head. That's Dwayne Keefe D Davis, who actually wrote a memoir in 2019 about the fact that he said he was in that car with the shooter that killed Tupac Shakur. So why did it take 27 years for investigators to finally, there he is,
Keefe
make an
Dizzle.
arrest on one count of open murder? Great question. Let's bring in our ABC's Jacqueline Lee in LA, also our legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer, and also our contributor Kelly Carter. So, Terry, we were just talking, even though they made this arrest, they still didn't say what exactly they had to do this.
Right. They did point, I want to ask Brian about this, they did point to, as you point out, Dwayne Davis, Keefe D, made tons of basically confessions, admissions anyway,
that he was there.
that he was there, and that led to a search of his home in
Confessions.
Nevada, and that developed the evidence that results in the count of open murder with a deadly weapon and a gang enhancement. The theory of the case is that this was a gang dispute. So Brian, sort that out for us a little bit.
He got a gang enhancement charge.
Why did it take so long?
Yeah. So Terry and Kira, it's two main things that I heard that really made me think in this case. It's their saying that there's one theory of aiding and abetting. So I think that's how they're really bringing forward this trial. And also the other term would be corroboration. It seemed like they had a lot of information, but they had no firsthand knowledge or firsthand witness to say how this in fact happened. Because don't forget, a lot of this happened inside of a vehicle where no one was really talking. This case stalled for a long time because no one was speaking about it until they said 2018, Keefe D comes out with a memoir and starts talking about not only who was in the vehicle, but what happened and how guns were obtained and then passed around. That brings us into the aiding and abetting. It's what my grandfather
You big dummy! You big dummy!
But if you are facilitating, aiding, or encouraging the commission of a crime, you can face the exact same penalty that a person who does commit that crime, that being murder. So while we've always believed that another individual has in fact committed that murder, the fact that Keefe D has gone out and all but said he was in or around and surrounding and I guess maybe facilitating to some degree this crime, that I think is the theory the prosecution is going forward with without me being able to see the indictments.
So they end up at Davis's house in this raid that we actually got the exclusive video of. And they collect multiple computers, a cell phone, a hard drive, a Vibe magazine that featured Tupac Shakur, several .40 caliber bullets, and tubs containing photographs. So sort of, you know, as a lawyer, Brian, they finally have the one remaining person still alive that was in that car that's tied to this murder. Do we even know what led them to, was it the memoir that led them to Davis's house that then led to the search warrant that then led to all this evidence, and now it's just taken a few years to unravel and put everything together and finally make this arrest?
I think it would be a combination of the memoir along with putting together what Keefe D said in that memoir with what they already knew. Because don't forget, to get a search warrant, an officer, a sheriff, someone would have to go before a judge and say, I have probable cause. I have information to believe that a crime either did
Vlad TV,
to occur,
Bomb First, Art of Dialogue.
I can obtain if you allow me to go and search this location. And because of not only what they were looking for, but whom they were looking for this information, it gives us some insight to suggest what they
Vladimir
throughout their investigation. This is a memoir, and anyone who tells you who writes a book or even
wrote a book about it.
About their general ideas, there's the rough edit that often has a lot more information, and then there's the final edit that often gets whittled down to what the final product is. I'm thinking there's a lot of extra footage there that we didn't see in the memoir that the officers now are connecting to this case.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. And Kelly, you know, any murder that is...
Y'all share this live stream. This is the press conference for Keefe Dizzle.
Time is a national story, but this is a global story, isn't it? Talk a little bit about
this is a global
Tupac.
story.
Super global.
3 decades, people who loved Tupac, knew Tupac, or was a fan of Tupac have wanted to know what happened to Tupac, who killed Tupac. And I think what's interesting is watching that presser is you see, you know, Las Vegas, a Metropolitan Police Department really saying, I know that you guys lost faith in us, because they got a lot of criticism over the years. So did LAPD about the murder of Notorious B.I.G., that they did not care about the murder of this young black hip-hop superstar, and that therefore we would probably never find out what happened to him. We would never know the details surrounding this, you know, mysterious murder, because it has been mysterious for nearly 30 years. But the thing is, the people never let go of the interest. There have been many podcasts, TV series, docu-series, biopics about Tupac and about Notorious B.I.G., possible connections, what happened. There have been,
Vladimir.
you know, stories written in newspapers and magazines for
Reggie Wright.
years after their untimely deaths, trying to figure out what happened and put the pieces together. And so this is just going to renew.
Appreciate your super chat, the Herb Spot.
You know, even more interest in something that has really, quite frankly, never died down. It's never let go. You know, I was literally randomly listening to a Tupac song when I got the news about, you know, about this indictment, about this arrest. And so I think that kind of goes to show that people have not let it go. And I think people probably, like me, watch with their mouths dropped open, listening to the details out of this presser about the murder of Tupac Shakur.
But put this into perspective. I mean, you've been following this, Kelly, for a while. Brian, you have too. When just looking back, because I was a young reporter, Terry and I were talking about this. We remember when this happened, and you had to cover it. And then working in Los Angeles, of course, it was the lead all over all the newscasts. But there was, I mean, the Compton police named Orlando as the shooter. An LAPD detective, I wish I could remember his name, I know it's out there, he pointed to Orlando Davis also as the shooter. I mean, this was 20-something years ago, so it's not like the name was never out there, and you had the actual, Compton Police Department in an affidavit naming, Orlando's name. So what happened? I mean, it's not like this happened and poof, they had no idea who the shooter was. I mean, even two main detectives felt like they had their guy.
I mean, I at this point, I can only take what they gave us in that presser, and it sounds like they just didn't have all of the dots connected to bring anyone under arrest, for this murder. And that's kind of all we have to go on right now. But most certainly, I was in college when this happened. This is one of those moments where, if you were around, and most certainly if you were following the music, following even the rivalry, I think, on record between B.I.G. and Tupac, you knew exactly where you were. You remember exactly where you were when you found out that Tupac Shakur was gunned down, when you found out that he died a week later in that hospital in Las Vegas. You knew exactly where you were, and it stayed with you because it was so important, to the culture, and it was so important to fans and the people who, love this music and love these two rappers, and most certainly love Tupac and what he was able to do for hip-hop music.
I've got a son who was born long after he died, and just at this point, mesmerized by his music and his...
My 12-year-old twins.
There you go.
I mean, really. It's
a great artist, a great American artist. And I want to go to Jacqueline about what happens next now. Obviously, we have the indictment. This will go to trial, it sounds like. Talk about what happens next and a timeline.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Wilson, who's the Clark County District Attorney, did say that Davis will appear in court within the next few days. That will determine his custody status and set the jury trial date. But what we should emphasize is during the press conference, all of the officials said this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more information that's going to be shared at trial. They didn't want to share too much. As you guys have all mentioned, there's massive interest in this case, so they are kind of keeping tight-lipped about exactly what they have, aside from what they released in the press conference. And they also said that Tupac's family, they have been kept in the loop throughout this whole investigation, but it'll be very interesting to see what comes out at trial, because they kept saying we have a lot more information that we're going to reveal, but we need to wait for that point. And they said, this is just the beginning of the process, and to them it's really important that they're successful when it comes to the prosecution, guys.
It's pretty remarkable. There were some that thought, this day would never come just because everybody had been killed that was involved. And it's wild.
Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, man, for more breaking news and developments in relation to the Tupac Shakur murder case.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We actually are getting to more breaking news now, this time in Georgia.